Hello, I'm Jeff Gundy, and some of my colleagues who are also teaching Becoming a Scholar thought that might be helpful if I would make a little video about my essay, which you've been reading, and just sort of talk a little bit about how it came to be. The first moment I recall when the real germ of it, I was in the car driving along somewhere in Europe with my wife. She was driving. I was in the passenger seat with a couple of guidebooks and a couple of maps trying to figure out where we were going, as was common during that trip. And by then we'd seen a bunch of these sites, and I had this thought about how strange it was to go from these grand, glorious, expensive, magnificent cathedrals to the hidden church there at Pingjum, in what looked like a house, very plain kind of meeting place, and then to this cave that was even plainer and less constructed yet. And so that was where it started, and I began really with no sense that I knew what I was doing or what I wanted to find out exactly or how the essay would end up, but more with that sense of not knowing, but wanting to find out, of wanting to follow along with this sense of just curiosity and strangeness. So much of the work on the essay happened, of course, after we got back. I took notes and I took pictures and so forth as we were there, but most of the work happened after we got home. I did a lot of research on cathedrals. I did research on Mennonite and Anabaptist history. I found this folder this morning with some of that research. I had a research assistant that summer, a wonderful student who I found here. These are some of the notes that she made for me, which you can see. Thank you, Amber Reif. Still, I'm grateful to her. I found an essay by Gerald Mast called Anabaptist Separation and Arguments Against the Sword in the Schleitheim Brotherly Union, which is now part of a book of Gerald's, this book, which I also read carefully and helped me with things. I had to learn a lot about, both cathedrals and so forth, and really, even though I'd grown up Mennonite and all that, I had to learn a lot more about that Anabaptist history and Mennonite history in order to write this essay. I had to learn a lot of things that I didn't put into the essay in order to write it. I found these other books. This one's called Amish Mennonites in Germany. It's by a guy named Herman Guth, whom I actually met during this trip. And that has a lot of just biographical detail. Some of the people in there are my ancestors 5 or 6 generations back. So that was fascinating. And the other book that was important to me, this is a book called The Tailor King, and it's about Munster. The essay talks a good deal about Munster and that rebellion there and those cages at the top of the cathedral where the ringleaders' bodies were put. And so I had to learn a lot about that. And then, of course, there was the process of writing and organizing. And most of the rest of this stack of papers, which I can show you here, is a very thick stack, is drafts of this essay. The first one that I found is just called, it has at the beginning, Draft Revised 899. And that was the summer that we went to Europe, so that was just a few months after we were there. That one is all marked up and changed and around in all kinds of different ways. There are many, many other versions in here, all kinds of plans. This is the printout that I got just before this essay appeared in the Georgia Review. This was the copy editing printout. They were still doing that on paper in those primitive days. So there's this long process of getting this thing into print. It was in the winter 2000 issue of Georgia Review. So that was actually, a couple of years, not too bad for something like that. Well, there's a business of writing and organizing the essay. Many things did become clearer about it, but I would also say that one of the things that happened was that I still had a lot of questions at the end. If you've read the essay, you know that it poses a lot of questions and then doesn't really answer them in a final sort of way. But at least the questions are clearer. So for those of you who are thinking about projects, working on projects of your own, I hope you'll think of my process as perhaps helpful to you in thinking about how you might approach your own project. You're going to have a different subject matter, but that business of starting with something that you just want to learn more about, of digging in and finding out all the things that you can from a variety of sources, and then putting it together in some kind of way that will be of interest and maybe of use to other people. Last thing, about audience. We're talking some about that in my section, probably in yours too. I was very conscious in writing this essay that I was writing not primarily for a Mennonite audience. This appeared in the Georgia Review, which is a general interest literary magazine. Most of its readers aren't Mennonite, don't know much about Mennonites, and so I was conscious of writing for people who would need a lot of background, who would need things explained to them, right? It's a sophisticated audience for that magazine, but not one that's particularly religious. And so I was also conscious of not trying to come across as someone who sort of was stuffy or trying to convert people to my religious views, which wasn't the aim of the essay and probably was not going to happen anyway with the kind of readers that they have. So think about your own sense of audience. Who are you writing for, and what do they need? What do they want? What might you do for them? How might you inform them, give them some kind of pleasure in the reading or the experience of the project, and all those kinds of things. All right, thank you.